It's time for Political Buzz, the television forum to discuss politics and issues of interest for all of Western New York. Now, from the WBBZ television studio at the Eastern Hills Mall, this is Political Buzz.
Welcome to Political Buzz. I'm Phil Arno. Today we're going to be talking about tradition, American values, patriotism. More specifically, we're going to be talking about the Boy Scouts of America. For over 100 years, the Boy Scouts of America have brought discipline and honor, integrity to generations of American boys. Outdoor activities, self-reliance, confidence, brotherhood, these things are all part of the scouting experience. Duty to God, duty to country, duty to other people, and duty to self. For boys to be taught these things, how could anybody not want that for our youth today? Now, to talk about scouting and where it stands in today's culture, my guest today, our City Council member, Demone Smith, Majority Leader, and Russell Etzenhouser, Executive Director of the Niagara Frontier Council for the Boy Scouts. We'll start with Russell. Russell, in the last generation, Boy Scouting has had a lot of challenges. There's a lot more activities that are making demands on our kids, sports. And as I said, if you ask my kids, homework, and there's been political protests against scouting. There's been a lot more single-parent families where the mom or dad can't help out or have the time. It just seems that there are a lot of forces in play now that are making it hard for scouting to continue the way it has in the past.
Well, certainly the environment that scouting faces today is different than it was when I was a scout 40 years ago. And even just in the last 10 to 20 years, it's changed significantly. I think you hit upon a big point is it's a much more competitive environment today where there's many more opportunities for sports. And when I was a kid, you played football in the fall and you played baseball in the spring, but it was just a defined period of time. Today, if you're interested in sports and you want to be serious with it, you might be doing that all year long. And so it really is a little different in terms of how young people have different opportunities in front of them. Additionally, I think one of the things that has really changed things for us is that 20 years ago, it was very common that the parents of most of the scout-age kids had been in scouts themselves. It was about 40 years ago that the participation in scouting really started to change and decrease because of that increasing opportunity. And so today, it's very common where a boy's parents may never have been a scout, and so they don't understand what scouting does, and they don't understand how it changes boys in the way that you describe.
Is it, in addition to all the demands and the single-parent families and everything that we mentioned, culturally, it seems like the values that have been traditional through generations of Americans and drew people to scouting, those have been kind of diluted a little bit, and it's not as patriotic a nation as it might have been in the 1930s or 40s or 50s. Is that part of the equation?
I think that there's definitely part of the equation is a change in cultural attitudes, and it seems like the current generational shift that's gone on, at least from studies that I've seen, has shown that there's a bigger change between the parents of millennials and millennials themselves in terms of really changing what they value and what is felt as what is good and not good. And I think attitudes towards a lot of different social issues today are vastly different in this group of 30-year-olds, 30-somethings, which really are the parents of our scout-age boys today.
Demone, you've been a strong supporter of scouting for a long time.
Yes.
But in your area, in the city, it's really underrepresented. There's like 900 kids total in the city that are scouts, out of like more than 8,000 in Western New York. What's the problem in the city? What's the challenge there?
Well, one is recruiting leaders and then making people understand, like Russ said, what scouting does. Because you do have a lot of people that just weren't scouts. I wasn't a scout, but when I started to look at the program, I was like, wow, this is a really good program, and became involved in the program. Then you truly understand what scouting really is. So once you start to get people exposed to it and then you start to have kids involved in it, and they start talking about it to their friends, then it starts to expand. We've been doing it in the inner city, and it's been a bunch of dads that got together and run a scouting troop. It was actually started by some moms who said, hey, we need some help, and we'll do all the paperwork if you guys just come in and do the scouting part of it. And we did it. So differences like that bring scouting into different environments or different areas where there traditionally wasn't a scouting program. But scouting has been in the city. It has its ups and downs, but there definitely is room to do more in scouting.
Well, there was a meeting last Monday night of civic leaders, and they were talking about the challenges, most specifically the challenges that young black men in the city face with the crime and poverty and just all the social issues that pull them in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. In that meeting, nothing that I've read or heard indicates that anybody brought up scouting as a way to get kids started in the right path. Is that something that can be approached? I mean, in the city, it's going to take a combined effort from the government, which is kind of hesitant to get involved with private things like scouting, even though they support it, and private groups, the pastors and the congregations in the area, which are very big on the values that we're talking about.
Yep. Well, that meeting was a first meeting, and they start to focus on just general items and pretty much trying to convene and set the focus on what that group wants to meet about. I think when you start to drill down to the specifics and start to look at what works, scouting is one of the big things that works. If you look at the guys that we've been working with, some of the guys I've been working with since they were 6, 7 years old, and if you look at them now and see what kind of young men that they are,
it works.
It works.
It works. It's definitely a good direction to encourage these kids to go in. Is there a resistance on the part of the kids, or is it just, the parents don't have the time, they don't want to get their kids involved?
It's more exposure, and people knowing what Scouts is about. And getting communities to see that this is a good program. There are people who may not feel a certain way. Like you said, people have done protests and everything else. Right. But the people who have had some type of relationship with scouting, they will tell you this is a very good program. And that message starts to get out into the communities, and people start to enroll their kids. This year, we almost had to say we can't take no more kids, but we was like, no, we're going to make it work. Because the word starts to go out into the community, and people want to get their kids into something positive. What we need now is leaders to come in, and traditionally a lot of the churches held scout troops and packs, and so that's going to play a big part in what we do into trying to stabilize and move the community forward. Is going to be Boy Scouting.
Yeah, I was at St. Margaret's. Troop 125 in North Buffalo. Mm-hmm. That's how I got involved. You said, Russell, that the participation has started to go down from when, in the 1950s or 40s?
Early 1970s was the peak.
And how has scouting changed, or has it adapted over the years to try and maybe fit in a little bit better? And is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because traditionally, scouting values are, the top of the line in terms of what we hope for.
Well, in the 104 years that scouting's existed, the core values of scouting have not changed at all. There are 12 points to the Scout Law. They are the exact same 12 points that they were in 1910, and they are today. What has changed is the program itself has changed to make sure that we are able to connect with kids. So today we have programs that are geared around science, technology, engineering, and math to help reinforce those needed skills for kids. We also have programs today that deal with stand-up paddle boards out at our camp, which is kind of a new thing that young people like to do. So we try to make sure that we're incorporating the new exciting activities that kids want to be engaged with. But at the same time, the core values remain the same. And really what scouting does is that it helps that young person begin to develop that sense of responsibility that they have. And you mentioned it in the opening, but we refer to scouting as addressing things through the Scout Oath, which is a threefold promise, which is their duty to self, duty to God and country, and duty to others. And we get that young person to get focused at the youngest age on themselves, but as they get older, they're doing service projects for the community. One of the young men in Demone's troop is about to become an Eagle Scout. He had a fantastic Eagle Scout project that he carried out, but all along the way, starting even with our young Cub Scouts, they start to learn that there's value in helping other people. And so we do that. So the values haven't changed, but the elements of the program have to try to help make sure that it's exciting and something that appeals to kids of this day.
Interesting topic. That's all the time we have for this segment. We'll continue the talk when we come back.